Hey, everybody, it's Eric J. Olson, and I'm coming at you live with another live episode of the Managing Partners Podcast. On the Managing Partners Podcast, we interview America's top lawyers to see what they are doing to grow their law firms and to keep their case pipeline full. And today, all the way from Tennessee, I have Linley Richter. Hey, Linley, how you doing?
Eric, doing good, man. Good to talk to you.
Likewise, I appreciate you making the time. Thanks.
Sure.
So Linley is a divorce and mediation attorney out of Tennessee. Do you cover the entire state of Tennessee?
Well, right now I'm covering about half the state. My main office is in Memphis. I opened an office in Middle Tennessee, actually in Franklin, Tennessee, within the last couple of months. So I'm branching out toward Middle Tennessee, and that's where I grew up. So I'm kind of comfortable here in Middle Tennessee. But that's about half the state is what I cover.
Good for you. That's impressive, especially, there's a lot going on in the world, the United States, COVID, all that stuff. So to open a second office now is impressive. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if you would, can you give us a little more background on you, your firm, the kinds of cases and clients that you work with?
Sure, I'll be glad to. I started practicing in 1992, which tells you how old I am. So I've been practicing almost 30 years. When I started out, I started working for a lawyer named Seymour Rosenberg in Memphis, who was quite a character. He looked like Danny DeVito and smoked a cigar that was about a foot long. But I started clerking for him when I was in my second year of law school, and continued to work for him for about 10 years. And then I went out on my own, and I learned a lot from him, a whole lot. I owe him a lot for that. He, interestingly enough, when I started working for him, about a week after I started working, he got served with divorce papers, and he kind of went into a little bit of a spiral. And so as a law clerk, the secretary and I began to kind of take over the cases, and I learned a whole lot. It was almost trial by fire at that point. And so I really learned a lot about practice in law. I've been practicing in the area of domestic law only for about 10 years. And before that, I did criminal, personal injury, workers' compensation, and divorce and family law. But I've changed my practice, and I concentrate only on family law cases now, which would include divorce, child custody, child support, adoptions, things like that. So that's the focus of my practice, and I've been doing that now for about 10 years exclusively. And like I said, I opened an office in Middle Tennessee just a couple of months ago, and starting to market here. Hadn't done much in the way of marketing here, but have a pretty good marketing foundation in Memphis, which is where I had been for almost 30 years, like I say.
Oh, so
that's the primary focus of my practice, family law.
Excellent. Yeah, and it's my understanding that family lawyers are doing pretty well these days. There's a lot to be covering, right?
Yeah, there is. It's funny. People ask me if I got a stimulus check, and my response is, I got about 150 stimulus checks. Everybody that got a stimulus check, I think, went and hired their divorce attorney, and so I got a lot of stimulus checks. But yeah, business was relatively good. It actually had a little bit of an uptick during the last year and a half from the previous couple of years. So it was kind of interesting. I wouldn't have expected that at the beginning of the pandemic, but it turned out that way. And I know a lot of other lawyers have had the same experience at practice in divorce. So it's interesting. The courts have really adapted to the new system. In Memphis, everything pretty much is by Zoom. And so I've tried a number of cases over the last year and a half by Zoom, and I've gotten used to doing that. But it's been interesting. As an older lawyer, we like to bang on tables and throw our arms around and do things like that, and we're kind of muted when we do it by Zoom. We just can't do that. So, but I've gotten used to it and actually enjoy doing cases by Zoom, and think that's probably what's going to happen in the future with a lot of different cases.
Oh, is that right? See, I was thinking that as the pandemic kind of it goes into history, if you will, that the courts would kind of go back to normal. Now, granted, these Zoom depositions and trials are convenient, but it seems like I would think that the judges would want some normalcy to be returned to their courtrooms.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the trials, especially jury trials, are have to be live. But we have status conferences, we have motions. And a lot of the federal courts did away with oral arguments on motions years ago. In state court here in Tennessee, most courts have a motion docket. In Shelby County, it's on Friday morning. I think in Davidson County, the same thing. So, motions now are still being handled by Zoom. And then the interesting thing is child support cases in juvenile court in Shelby County are going to, I understand, continue to be by Zoom. And they've actually had an incredible increase in the number of people that show up on Zoom as opposed to the people that would show up in person. And I've talked to some of the child support judges, and, they think it's because people couldn't find, daycare to keep their kids when they had court. And so, or they were working and couldn't take off. And so they just ended up missing court. And with it being by Zoom, it's a lot easier just to log in. Everybody's got a phone now, smartphone. So it just makes it easier. And so there's a huge increase in the number of people that are actually participating after the pandemic than before the pandemic. So I think we're going to continue to see Zoom on child support cases.
Well, that's good. We have a couple comments already. So we have first Kevin Daisy, who is the other host of the Managing Partners podcast. We alternate episodes. Congrats on the new office. I agree. That's really impressive. And then Keith, you have a fan here. Keith Robinson says, "I'm loving these Facebook Lives, and I think it's all because of you." So.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
No, that's great. Well, hey, one of the things, like I said earlier, that a lot of managing partners are interested in is how to keep their case pipeline full. And what that means to me is, how do you go and get new clients? So what are some different ways that you use to get new clients?
Well, when I started practicing, Yellow Pages was the only way to go. You could radio advertise, and there were a few lawyers doing television advertising back then for personal injury cases. But other than that, Yellow Pages was it. And so, as we developed the internet and marketing on the internet, I was lucky in that I grabbed up a URL pretty early on. It's over 20 years old now. And so I've got an extremely old URL. And really, for an SEO purposes, that helps considerably. So a lot of my traffic actually comes organically. I show up on the first page on most Google searches. The interesting thing about SEO and law is there's not a lot that changes. I had a list of keywords that I got about, 17, 18 years ago. And those keywords are just as valid today as they were, 15, 16, 17 years ago for lawyers. People are going to search, Memphis divorce attorney or Nashville divorce attorney that they were searching that 20 years ago. They're going to continue to search it when they're looking for a lawyer. So those things don't really change in the law. I do my own website. I've got Wix is the platform I use, or the company that I use to host my website. I did it myself. And I've had a website for over 20 years now. And so that's how I get most of my traffic. Google Places, or Google My Business, actually is what it's called now. That brings in a ton of business. My office in Memphis is in an area called Cordova. There are not a lot of lawyers that do domestic work in Cordova. So I usually pop up, if anybody in that area Googles, Memphis divorce attorney or divorce attorney near me, my profile pops up on Google My Business. So that's a big way that I'm getting clients. Now, the new thing and the most interesting thing is TikTok. And you may be surprised by this, but I got on TikTok about 7 months ago, and I've got about 500,000 followers on TikTok. And I get a tremendous amount of calls and a good bit of business from TikTok. And it's really fascinating to me. And I'll give you the background if you want me to on how that got
Absolutely.
started. Well, I love it. All right, here's the deal. Around Christmas, I took my family down to Charleston, South Carolina, and we spent Christmas down there. And we went to Congaree National Park, which is about an hour and a half from there. And on our way there, I was listening to a podcast called Business Wars. and they were talking about TikTok and Instagram and all the different social media platforms. And my son, who was 23 at the time, popped up and said, "Hey, Dad, there's some lawyers that I see on TikTok." And so I kind of stuck that in the back of my mind. When we got back to Memphis, I started looking, just to see what was out there. And sure enough, there were some lawyers on there that were getting some pretty good traffic. Started reading a few articles. I went on and signed up for TikTok and started looking at some of those lawyers that were on TikTok. And then about 3 weeks later, actually on February 1st, I started a little campaign with TikTok. And what I did was I started putting 4 videos up a day, all of them at night, about an hour apart. And it blew up. And over the next 7 months, I continued to grow. And I've got about 500,000 followers now, which is pretty good on TikTok. I mean, there's some people that have, 4 or 5 million, but it seemed to work and seemed to click. And I'll usually, when I come in the morning in the office, I'll usually knock out about 2 or 3 TikToks, and then my son usually edits them, and I'll put them up at night, and they get a lot of views. I mean, there's not a single one I don't think that's had less than 10,000 views. So that's been my way I've marketed here recently, and I've gotten a lot of business from that. So just a little social media platform that most people don't even think about in terms of marketing their law firm, but it's worked for me. So just something to think about.
That's incredible. Good for you. Now, okay, TikTok. People think TikTok, you have to dance and do these silly skits. I'm guessing you're not dancing as much as.
I would have negative 500,000 followers.
I don't know. I may want to see that, but yeah. So what is your take on TikTok? How do you go about, what's your formula?
Well, I just, I tell a story, and I usually start it off with a little catchphrase. Like one of them would be, my favorite one that I ever did was I started off and I said, "Big booty cutie." And then I paused for a second. I said, that's the email address of my client that the judge heard during the divorce trial.
All right.
Well, when you hear that, if you're listening to TikTok and that comes up, it catches you, and you're going to sit there and listen to it for, at least 15, 20 seconds. And when that happens, the algorithm, as I understand it with TikTok, is that the longer people view your video, the more people it will send it out to. And so if you can do that on TikTok, if you can give something interesting, child support seems to be a big hot button issue on TikTok. I think a lot of people either hate or love child support. And so I can tell child support stories, child support horror stories, as I call them. And that seems to get a lot of traction. But, that's the key to it, just to tell a story and to start off with something that catches people's attention, and we'll keep them on there for at least 15 seconds. And just about every one of my TikToks are exactly 1 minute in length. I don't like to go over that. And it's hard to stay under that. So a minute, it seems to be the sweet spot for me. But it's worked out really well.
That is great. All right. So I want to check it out. I want to check out your TikTok. How do I find you? By your name?
I think so. I think if you just put in hashtag Linley Richter, I think you'll come up on there. You can actually put that in Google as well. And that's another thing. I'm not sure the correlation between TikTok and Google and the SEO on that. I've got a link to the TikToks on my website, and I think there's a lot of back and forth. I think a lot of people on TikTok will log onto my website, and so that drives a lot of traffic to the website, and possibly vice versa. I don't know, but I don't know if that's increased my ranking in Google or not. But it's something to think about anyway.
Well, good for you. A lot of people think that TikTok, Instagram, these social media platforms, they just kind of blow it off, right? And I was joking around before about TikTok with the dancing and the music, and that's kind of how it started with the kids. But it's aging up, just like all these platforms, right? Facebook started off just for Harvard undergrads that were in Harvard at the time, and it's aged up. It's gone to different colleges around the world, and it's aged up. Instagram, the same thing, right? So the demographics get older over time, especially as these kids grow a little bit older. They have kids. Grandparents want to see pictures of the kids. TikTok is the same way. I want to share something with you and the audience. So if you're listening, I'll explain what's going on. But this is someone that I follow on Instagram. The handle is Law by Mike. Look at how many followers, 517,000 followers. That is incredibly impressive. So there's a lot of attention that can be had if you play the social media game. And Linley, it sounds like you're doing something right. So good for you. That's impressive.
Well, Law by Mike also is on TikTok, and I think he has somewhere around 5 million followers on TikTok.
Is that right? Wow.
One other real interesting story. A lot of people see me on TikTok, but they don't want to admit that they're actually on TikTok. So a lot of lawyers will say things like, "Hey, my daughter saw you on TikTok the other day and showed me." And so I'll get a lot of that. But I had a judge one time in court. I'd finished my case, and she said, "Mr. Richter, I really enjoy your TikToks." And it was an actual judge that was watching TikTok. So
that's great.
You never know. There are a lot of people out there that are watching TikTok, and I think it's becoming a more serious platform. So
yeah,
something to take into consideration.
It's bound to happen. So well done there. Well, that's awesome. Now when someone sees a TikTok or some other way they find you, and they become a prospective client, they either call or there's a contact us form. There's usually some period of time until they become a client, or you never hear from them again. What are some tools that you use and some techniques that you use to nurture these prospective clients?
That's my big problem. And that's where I need to improve, because I really don't have a system in place for that. And client intake from internet, things like that, that's the toughest thing that I have going right now. That's my pain point, so to speak. And that's where I really need to work on things, because I'm old fashioned. Again, I started when the Yellow Pages were around. So people would call up and, we knew that they came in from the Yellow Pages or were a referral from another client. And so, we would call them back and talk to them, and that was it. Well, now you've got, social media platforms, you've got people sending you emails through your website and things like that. And I really don't, to be honest with you, have a good intake system. I know there's some out there. And the problem I've got is that I do just about everything. I'm the marketing guy, I'm the accounting guy, I'm the comptroller, I'm the, and then every once in a while I get to practice a little law, is what I jokingly tell people. So it's hard when you wear all those hats to be able to take the time and the energy to concentrate on things like that. And so I end up missing stuff like that. I've got TikTok down, but some of the other platforms and some of the other ways to get and keep clients, I'm somewhat lacking in. So, that's where my problems are right there.
Yeah, I'm with you, especially with all these different channels. Actually, we have another comment from Eric Thomas. I agree. It is tough to get back in touch with prospective clients quick without a good system. And, even if it's just a spreadsheet or piece of paper, just something, right? But there's so many different channels for prospective clients to come in these days. Website, Google My Business, phone calls, TikTok, Instagram, you name it. Like it can be overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah, it really can.
Awesome. Well, so you just opened a second office, and you're going to be building that out. What's the next couple of steps for you? What are your growth plans?
I'm going to have to add another lawyer or two to help out. So that's I think that's number one, and probably additional staff as well, especially in the Memphis office. In the Nashville office, Middle Tennessee office. I've got a great paralegal in the Memphis office who's been with me for about 13, 14 years. And she's been in the business for about 30 years. And that's so valuable to have that. Mm-hmm. But, it's hard to find people to work nowadays. And especially in this area of the country, there are, probably 2 jobs for every one person that's applying. So it's hard to get people to work. So that's an issue. But I'll probably be adding an attorney or 2 in the next year. And just try to grow the practice in this Middle Tennessee area and continue in the West Tennessee area.
Nice.
So
Nice.
that's my plans.
Yeah, we hear the same thing from a lot of other managing partners. It's difficult to find the quality folks that they're looking for. It seems to be a consistent thing. But then again, it's one of those things where you may not want to limit your own firm's potential. You need to press forward and find a way to get those quality folks to come in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, so the next question I'd like to ask is, what's one thing that's worked especially well for your marketing? I think you've answered that. Between TikTok and Google, sounds like you're playing the Google game, which is incredible. Good for you. But what about something that's not working quite as well, or in the past hasn't, and maybe something you dropped, like you mentioned the Yellow Pages, something kind of like that along those lines?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, Facebook, I haven't really spent a lot of time concentrating on Facebook, but I think there's a big market there, a big outlet there for marketing for law firms. And I guess about 10 or 12 years ago, I had a partner, and we hired a social media person to come in and start a social media campaign. And this was early on. I mean, this was when, Facebook was still relatively young. And I don't even think they had gone public yet. So we actually started a little campaign with that. We really didn't understand much about what was happening. And then we backed off of that. And then, I just never really picked it back up as far as Facebook goes. But I think I could probably spend a little bit more time concentrating on things like Facebook, Instagram, some of those platforms that historically have not been big platforms for lawyers, but I think have over the last few years have become bigger and more important.
I agree. Yeah, definitely. And Facebook owns Instagram, so it's very easy to cross posts and things like that. Another comment, getting a lot of comments here. People like you. I knew TikTok was important in branding, but thank you for correcting the myths most people have about branding utilizing that social media platform. That's from Keith Robinson on Facebook. Thanks, Keith. Yeah, I agree. No, that's great. Definitely. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really important for everyone who's listening or watching to kind of take in, is that you can utilize these new platforms, even though everybody thinks, it's just for kids or whatever. Like these platforms are aging up. The population is aging up. There's an opportunity there if you make the investment. And you said, like, back to TikTok, you make 1 minute TikToks and you make several a day.
Yep.
Now I'm guessing at this point you're trying to put not to put too much time into these, right? So maybe 20 minutes a day you're putting into making TikToks, or is it more than that?
No, it's probably 10 to 15 minutes is about it. And again, my son edits them, so whatever time he spends, but he's got it down to where it doesn't take him but 5 minutes. I think the most time is getting the file from me to him and then back to me again so I can post it. So it's pretty easy. I've been doing this long enough to where I can come up with subject matter pretty quickly. And plus I get a lot of calls during the day, and that's good fodder for subject matter on TikTok as well. So it's been fairly easy to come up with content, especially just little 1 minute, videos. And another thing is I will also put those on YouTube. So even though they're just a minute long, I put those on YouTube. Yep. And so, it kind of populates my YouTube channel, which I don't really concentrate on that much. I think I've got maybe 300 or 400 followers, something like that, or subscribers on YouTube. I get that terminology mixed up. Followers on TikTok, subscribers on YouTube. So and friends on Facebook, I guess. Something like that.
Subs, right? You're worried about subs on YouTube.
Okay.
No, that's great. Yeah, you might as well repurpose. We do that a lot here. You mentioned how quick you can kind of like bang out some of these TikToks, and I find it the same with our podcast. So this is the Managing Partners podcast. Kevin and I have a second podcast that we've been doing for about 2.5 years called Journey to $100 Million, where we talk about growing the agency with the goal of hitting $100 million by 2030. and all the things that we're learning. It's a passion project for us, but these are short, right? Like not 1 minute, but about 5-minute long episodes. But it's just everything that's happening here. And it's like in real time, kind of like you say, like you get a phone call and that's fodder for the next day's TikToks. With us, it's, I may do an episode about how I interviewed you and how you're doing TikTok, and we need to embrace that, right? So just as things happen during the course of your day, things that managing partners may feel like it's just routine, no big deal, the rest of the world doesn't know these things, and you're telling a story. So I really like the approach that you've taken there.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Now, if someone would like to pick your brain about how they can start their own TikTok or what you're doing to be successful in family law in Tennessee, what is a good way for them to reach out to you?
Linley Richter at gmail.com is the best way to reach me. Or you could reach me through my website, which is rivercitylaw.com,
Yep.
Either one of those. And I think there's a contact form on the River City Law website. And, Google My Business would be another way. So, but I think the best way is probably through email, through linleyrichter at gmail.com. And that's the best way to I think, reach out and talk to me if you have any questions.
That was a lot of fun. I appreciate it, Linley. Thanks so much. All right, everybody. If you would like to watch or listen to other podcast episodes like this is the first one I think that we've talked about TikTok, but there is a lot of other really good information in the 100+ backlog of episodes that we have now of interviewing managing partners. You can check out that full library at arraylaw.com/podcast. And if you are looking for a digital marketing agency that will take care of your law firm, please consider my agency, Array Digital. We are at arraylaw.com, and we will take care of your website, SEO, social media, and online advertising. All right, Linley, appreciate it so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed it, Eric. Take care.
Likewise.